Ever watch a cartoon and think, wait, is this just a Gumball in disguise? The weird jokes, the wild animation, the kind of vibe that makes you wonder if this really was made for kids. It leads back to the amazing world of Gumball. The show kicked off a wave of copycats, spin-offs, and Gumball-style chaos. But what happened to all those shows? Let's break it down. Imagine you're flipping through channels and suddenly see a cartoon that just feels like Gumball. The characters, the jokes, the style, everything looks and sounds the same. But wait. The main character is a goat, his sidekick is a frog, and it's all in Mandarin. Welcome to Miracle Star, China's audacious attempt at recreating the magic of Gumball with a dairy-driven twist. In 2014, Chinese dairy company Sanyuan Foods decided to promote their goat milk products in an unconventional way by creating an animated series. Thus, Miracle Star was born, featuring Mao Leijing, often referred to as Kiki, a goat, and his talking pet frog, Gua Gua. The show's primary goal? To market goat milk to children, but instead of crafting an original narrative, the creators took a shortcut. They replicated the amazing world of Gumball almost frame by frame. From the outset, Miracle Star bore an uncanny resemblance to Gumball. Entire scenes were lifted directly with only minor tweaks to the characters' designs and settings. One glaring example is the replication of Gumball's episode, the DVD. In Gumball's version, Gumball forgets to return a DVD, leading to a series of comedic events. Miracle Star mirrored this plot almost identically, substituting its own characters but retaining the same sequence of events, dialogue, and even camera angles. Such blatant copying extended to multiple episodes, making it evident that Miracle Star was more than just inspired by Gumball, it was a direct clone. However, rather than pursuing legal action, Cartoon Network chose a more creative route. In 2017, they aired an episode titled The Copycats, where Gumball and Darwin encounter Chi-Chi and Ribbit, characters suspiciously similar to themselves. The episode satirizes the concept of imitation. It's a meta-commentary on Miracle Star, cleverly addressing the copying through humor and storytelling. Despite its short run, Miracle Star faced heavy criticism for copying too much from Gumball. Both fans and critics called it out for being a shameless ripoff. With only 12 episodes produced, the series was cancelled, leaving behind a legacy as one of the most notorious examples of cartoon imitation. An interesting aspect of Miracle Star is the absence of a character equivalent to Gumball's sister Anais. This omission may be attributed to China's former one-child policy, which limited families to a single child. The policy influenced various aspects of Chinese media and culture, possibly explaining the decision to exclude a sibling character from the show's main family. But what happens when a show's creator, once part of the original, crafts a new series that feels all too similar? Let's get into the curious case of Pinky Malinky, where the lines between homage and self-replication blur. Imagine if someone who helped build the amazing world of Gumball decided to create their own cartoon. Pinky Malinky is one of the most misunderstood shows in the Gumball clone conversation. On paper, sounds original, a 12-year-old human-like hot dog trying to fit in at middle school while vlogging everything with the help of his two best friends, Babs and JJ. But fans quickly noticed something. It felt like Gumball. The timing, the humor, the surreal energy, it was all suspiciously familiar, and it makes sense. Chris Garbett, one of the show's creators, worked as a storyboard artist on Gumball Season 1 and as a writer on Season 2. It's no surprise that some of the stylistic flavor carried over into his next project. But here's the wild part. Pinky Malinky actually existed before Gumball. The pilot was first produced by Cartoon Network Studios Europe in 2009, 2 years before Gumball even premiered. That original short didn't take off, but years later, Nickelodeon picked it up, and after a string of delays, it finally dropped on Netflix in 2019. Not one season, but 3, all within the same year. 60 episodes, boom, done. It was Netflix's first collaboration with Nickelodeon, and also the first Nicktoon produced exclusively for the platform. Sounds like a win, right? Not quite. The problem was timing and perception. By 2019, Gumball was already a beloved cult classic. Anything that even resembled it would automatically draw comparisons, and Pinky Malinky had more than just a few surface similarities. Pinky's hyper-personality, reminiscent of Gumball's impulsiveness. Babs, the kind of quirky best friend who always wears green and orange. She's basically human Darwin with a hint of cat energy. JJ, the tech-obsessed, overly confident smart aleck. You could easily compare him to one of Gumball's schoolmates like Tobias or Banana Joe. It was an exact copy, but it was close enough to feel like the American remix of a British classic. What really cemented that vibe was the humor style. Pinky Malinky used exaggerated facial expressions, surreal physical gags, and reality warping scenarios, all traits shared by Gumball. There's even a scene in the episode Snacks where Pinky literally inflates like a balloon and flies into the air. It's the kind of gag you'd see in Gumball, SpongeBob, or even Ren and Stimpy. While Gumball played with genre conventions and occasionally dipped into satire, Pinky leaned heavily into internet culture. Pinky vlogs his life, gets obsessed with follower counts, and creates viral content. He's basically a Gen Z YouTuber in hot dog form. Now let's talk about the show's style. What truly separates Pinky Malinky from its alleged inspiration is the mockumentary format. The characters constantly break the fourth wall. Pinky treats the audience like his fan base, JJ records everything on his phone, and Babs treats the camera like it's a trusted friend. It's the Office Beats Diary of the Wimpy Kid with occasional food puns. This documentary-style storytelling is something Gumball never fully embraced, giving Pinky its own narrative engine, plus the world of Second Hat. The town where Pinky lives is a fully fleshed-out, absurd little place filled with talking animals, eccentric classmates, and over-the-top adults. Despite its creativity, Pinky Malinky never got the recognition it deserves. Netflix quietly released all 3 seasons within 7 months, January, April, and July of 2019. No marketing blitz, no big launch campaign, just a hot dog dropped into the algorithm and left to fend for himself. While it was nominated for a 2020 Daytime Emmy for Best Animation Editing, that wasn't enough to save it. Pinky did make one small comeback in 2023's interactive Netflix special, We Lost Our Human, where he appears in a quick cameo and jokingly refers to himself as Panky Malanky, now a meatball. Yes, really. So what happened to Pinky Malinky? It died from 1,000 small wounds. First, the platform shift from Nickelodeon to Netflix confused viewers. Then the binge release model robbed it of momentum. On top of that, the Gumball comparisons overshadowed the show's originality. To some, it was a clone, to others, it was just a Gumball spin-off in disguise. But the real story is more nuanced. It was a show created by someone who helped define Gumball, and naturally, some of that style stayed with him. The problem? It stayed a little too much. Let's be clear, Pinky Malinky is not a lazy ripoff. It didn't steal Gumball's scenes or recycle its characters. Instead, it inherited the same creative instincts and comedic sensibilities from a shared origin. The comparison is less plagiarized essay and more artists using the same paintbrush. But in an internet age where audiences are quick to call out clones, Pinky never really stood a chance. Once the Gumball ripoff label stuck, it was hard to shake. And that's a shame, because buried under the sausage jokes and TikTok-style vlogs was a show with real charm. It had a heart, clever writing, and some genuinely hilarious moments. But unfortunately, heart alone can't save you from being flattened by the weight of a more famous cartoon. So was it inspired? Absolutely. A copy? Not quite. Just a case of a creator cloning his own ideas, unintentionally, with a wink and a hot dog bun. But now we go from a show that felt like Gumball to one that actually shared its DNA, same studio, same visual style, and a dinosaur sidekick that's giving Darwin some serious competition. Let's talk about the show that might be Gumball's spiritual little brother, Elliot from Earth. If Pinky Malinky felt like Gumball's lost twin, then Elliot from Earth was a straight-up family. Same studio, same producers, even made by someone who worked on Gumball. Naturally, fans got excited. A new sci-fi show with Gumball vibes sounded perfect. But like many shows that orbit too close, it didn't last long before fading out. The premise of Elliot from Earth had promise. A smart, curious boy and his geologist mother, Frankie, discover a mysterious rock that zaps them across the galaxy to a gigantic space hub called the Centrium. Think intergalactic airport crossed with a sci-fi school, filled with aliens of every shape and slime. There they meet Mo, a walking, talking stegosaurus with glasses and anxiety, and the trio starts navigating their bizarre new life surrounded by creatures who don't always get Earth logic. On paper, it had all the magic ingredients, funny, heartfelt, visually colorful, and quirky in a way that only Cartoon Network could pull off. Not to mention that its creator described it as a love letter to science fiction, with some of Gumball's comedic DNA baked into its bones. That was the pitch, but in reality, things went sideways and fast. To be clear, Elliot from Earth wasn't a copy of Gumball. It didn't need to be. It came from the same creative ecosystem. But the moment it aired, comparisons flooded in. Viewers immediately noticed the familiar visual style, especially in background art and animation timing. The character designs were smoother and more alien, sure, but there were echoes of Gumball's expressiveness and charm. Mo the dinosaur in particular was pegged by fans as the Darwin analog, the lovable, optimistic, slightly clueless best friend who plays sidekick to a more grounded lead. And Elliot himself, he had Gumball's thirst for adventure, just dialed down and nerdified. Instead of hyper chaos, the tone was softer, more thoughtful, less slapstick, and more aw. And maybe that was the issue, because despite its connections and potential, Elliot from Earth never found its footing. It premiered in the UK in March 2021, and in the US just a few weeks later. The launch felt low-key, especially for a show expected to inherit the Gumball throne. It didn't get a flashy rollout, no social media storm, no major merchandising. Even Gumball, back in its heyday, had plush toys, memes, and Tumblr fandoms. Elliot felt like it was released quietly, like someone tiptoeing into a party already half over. The show had just one reason: 16 episodes total. It barely had time to build a fan base. No cliffhanger ending, no official cancellation announcement. It just stopped. One day you could watch it on HBO Max, then poof, it vanished. In August 2022, it was scrubbed as a part of Warner Bros. Discovery mass content purge, gone without warning, without explanation, like it never existed. The only places you could still catch glimpses was through unofficial YouTube uploads or nostalgic Reddit threads begging for a revival. What made it even stranger was that it wasn't just an average cartoon, it was critically liked. Common Sense Media gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Critics praised its inclusive messages, emotional intelligence, and diverse alien world building. But it seems none of that mattered. In the algorithm era, even the good ones can get buried. Now you must be thinking, so what actually happened to Elliot from Earth? And the answer, like most of these Gumball adjacent shows, is complicated. Some fans blame poor marketing, others point to timing, since it premiered during the tail end of the pandemic, when networks were reshuffling everything, and some believe it simply didn't have the same chaotic humor that made Gumball unforgettable, where Gumball felt like a punch in the face followed by a pie in the face. Elliot from Earth was more like a soft poke on the shoulder and a warm hug. That's not a bad thing, it's just not what Gumball's wild fanbase was expecting. There's also behind-the-scenes drama. Gijame Kasudo, the original creator, reportedly left the project during production over creative disagreement. That kind of shakeup can alter a show's trajectory fast. While the final version still bore some of his ideas, it's likely that the series we got wasn't exactly the one he envisioned. Without that consistent creative vision, and without strong network backing, Elliot from Earth became the cartoon equivalent of a signal lost in space. Floating, aimless, beautiful, but barely seen. But don't get it twisted, Elliot from Earth deserved better. It was charming, thoughtful, and beautifully animated. It offered a different kind of story, not chaotic, but curious, not loud, but loving. Still in the brutal ecosystem of children's TV, especially one hunted by the ghost of a blue cat and his goldfish brother, different isn't always enough. And when you're born too close to a legend, sometimes you vanish in its shadows. Now we've seen the clones, we've seen the cousins, but what happens when a show isn't trying to be Gumball at all, and yet it still gets buried? Let's talk about Harvey Beaks, the show that tiptoed dangerously close to Gumball's neighborhood, borrowed the quirky vibe, and then vanished before it ever got the credit it might have deserved. Created by C.H. Greenblatt, who also gave us Chowder, Harvey Beaks looked innocent on the surface. It aired on Nickelodeon in 2015 and revolved around a sweet, mild-mannered bird named Harvey and his chaotic imp besties, Fee and Foo. Together, they wandered the magical forest of Little Bark Grove, getting into weird, whimsical trouble. Sound familiar? Well, to many fans, it did. A bit too familiar. The show's art style had a unique softness, but the characters' dynamics, total deja vu. Harvey was the anxious, overly polite rule follower, the Gumball of the group, while Fee and Foo were the impulsive chaos agents, not unlike Darwin and Anais combined into 2 pint-sized wildcards. The structure followed the same slice-of-life meets surreal formula that the amazing world of Gumball perfected. Everyday kid problems laced with absurd adventures, emotional beats, and psychedelic randomness. Even the side characters, like a depressed skunk named Kratz or Techno Bear with too much energy, felt like they'd wander out of Elmore Junior High after a rough night out. But here's the twist. Harvey Beaks wasn't a cheap knockoff, it actually tried. It was a sweet, charming, and even touching at times. What doomed it wasn't laziness, it was Nickelodeon. After an initial season on the main network, Harvey Beaks got unceremoniously kicked to Nicktoons, the cartoon graveyard. Creator C.H. Greenblatt found out about the move from a fan's tweet. Yes, really. Imagine spending years building your dream forest and then learning it's been bulldozed through social media. The real tragedy? The show had heart, like orchestra-backed score, lush backgrounds, real emotional stakes kind of heart. But it didn't have Gumball's snark. It didn't bite. While Gumball laughed in your face and made fun of itself, other cartoons and literally everything, Harvey Beaks whispered kindly and asked if you'd like to read quietly in the corner. That's a noble effort, but in a post-Gumball landscape, niceness alone doesn't cut through the noise. The audience wanted chaos, they wanted satire, they wanted their brains slightly fried, and Harvey Beaks was just too soft-spoken to survive the war zone of children's television. Ratings dropped, merchandise never launched, fans begged Nickelodeon to give it a proper send-off. Instead, episodes were aired sporadically, sometimes without warning. Greenblatt even deleted angry Tumblr posts about the network's treatment of the show. It all ended quietly in December 2017. Not with a bang, but with a sad forest muted whimper. So what happened to Harvey Beaks, the show that tried to be Gumball's kinder cousin? It got friend-zoned by its own network, overshadowed by louder, zanier cartoons, and tossed aside before it ever got the momentum it needed. Maybe in a different world, one where Gumball didn't redefine animated comedy, Harvey could have bloomed. So from Miracle Star's goat milk fueled ripoff to Harvey Beaks' quietly emotional exit, it's clear. Trying to bottle the Gumball magic is no easy feat. It's a tightrope few shows have walked successfully. Now here's the big question. Which Gumball-inspired show do you think deserved to survive? And which one flopped the hardest? Drop your picks in the comments, let's debate.